Hi, fifth graders, welcome back. This summer has really flown by. It's just crazy how fast it's gone. Next week will be the last week and we'll just be doing lots of fun things. So thank you for joining me on the Sun Devil Learning Labs. This is fifth grade ELA and I'm Mrs. Wilson. As always, you guys just need your pencil or writing utensil and your ELA notebook. And of course, your book, Esperanza Rising. Alrighty. All right, let's review. Our topic was two voice poems. We worked with Miss Mooney, and our objective was that I can create a two voice poem. We had lots of fun with that. Me and Miss Mooney had a great time doing that and learned a lot about each other doing that. It was great. So today our theme is revisiting big metaphors and themes, revising and beginning to perform our two voice poems that we worked on yesterday. So we've been talking a lot about metaphors and themes, and this is definitely making all those connections and things that we have been doing, right? So our objective today is I can determine the meaning of literal and figurative language, so the metaphors and the similes in the text. I can determine a theme based on details in the text. I can use quotes to support my inferences in literary texts. And I can adapt my speech for a variety of contexts and texts using formal English when appropriate. So this sounds hard, but boys and girls, this is stuff that we have been working on, and I will be with you every step of the way. So today we don't have any entrance ticket because you guys took your big last test the last time that you worked with Miss Mooney, and because we're done with the book. And then because next week we're going to be doing all kinds of fun activities, I don't have an icebreaker or a game today, but believe me, next week will be fun. So we're just going to jump right in so that we can get this moving along, and that way we can get to all the fun stuff. So we have 5 big metaphors in Esperanza Rising. So we've talked about a lot of these in other lessons that you have worked with me. So the 5 big ones are the river, the heartbeat, the blanket, the rose, the grape/harvest. And so we're going to work on those today. So I will be asking you questions and we'll be reading, and then we'll kind of be working it together. But this is what I want you to be thinking of as we're reading and as we are writing these questions, right? So how does this big metaphor show up again in the last 2 chapters, right? And why did the author do this? How does this big metaphor help us understand an important message or theme in this novel, right? There's just so many ways that it can, and so we're just going to go ahead and dive on in and revisit all these big metaphors. It's going to be fun. Okay, so we're going to start with the river. So I want you to take out your ELA notebook and go ahead and write these questions down. And then they show you which pages they're on. So I also put them on the slide as well, and we'll read them together. So questions, these are the 3 questions you need to write down. So what does Esperanza and Miguel fight about on pages 220 through 224? What does Miguel mean when he says he was a second-class citizen in Mexico? That's on page 222. Why does Miguel call Esperanza a queen? Pages 224 and 18, okay? So these are the pages. I'll go ahead and read with you. If you want to read in your book or follow along with your reading finger, that is fine. Let me move myself so that I can read. So Oklahoma have families too. We must all work at something or we will all starve. A temper Esperanza did not recognize rage to the surface. Then, like the irrigation pipes in the fields with the water is first turned on, her anger burst forth. Why didn't your boss tell the others to dig the dishes? She looked at the dough she was holding in her hand and threw it at the wall. It stuck for an instant and then slowly slid down the wall like a darkened trail. Isabel's serious eyes darted from Miguel to Esperanza to Hortensia. Are we going to starve? No, they all answered at the same time. Esperanza's eyes were on fire. She stamped out of the cabin, slamming the door, and walked past the mulberry and the chinberry trees to the vineyard. She hurried down a row and then cut over the other. Esperanza! She heard Miguel's voice in the distance, but she didn't answer. When she got to the end of one row, she moved up to the other. Anza. She could hear him running toward the roads, catching up with her, and she kept her eyes on the tamarisk trees in the far distance, and she walked faster. Miguel eventually caught her arm and pulled her around. What is the matter with you? Is this the better life that you left Mexico for? Is it? Nothing is right here. Isabel will certainly not be queen no matter how badly she wants it because she is a Mexican. You cannot work on engines because you're a Mexican. We have gone to work through angry crowds for our own people who threw rocks at us. And I'm afraid they might have been right. They send people back to Mexico even if they don't belong there, just for speaking up. We live in a horse stall and none of this bothers you. Have you heard that they are building a new camp for Okies with a swimming pool? The Mexicans can only swim in one afternoon before they clean it. Have you heard they will be given into toilets and hot water? Why is that? Miguel, is it because they are fairest to the land? Tell me, is this the life really better than being a servant in Mexico? Miguel looked out over the grapes where the sun set low on the horizon, casting long shadows into the vineyard. He turned back to her. In Mexico, I was a second-class citizen. I stood on the other side of the river, remember? And I would have stayed that way my entire life. At least here, I have a chance, however small, to become more than I was. You obviously can never understand this because you have never lived without hope. She clenched her fists and closed her eyes tight in frustration. Miguel, do you not understand? You are still a second-class citizen because you act like one. Letting them take advantage of you like that, why don't you go to your boss and confront him? Why don't you speak up for yourself and your talents? You're beginning to sound like the strikers, Esperanza, said Miguel coolly. There are more than one way to get what you want in this country. Maybe I must be determined than others to succeed, but I know that it will happen. Acuente tantito y la fruta cara en tu mano. The words stopped her and as if someone had to slap her in the face. Papa's words, wait a little while and the fruit will fall into your hand. But she was tired of waiting. She was tired of Mama being sick and Abuelita being far away and Papa being dead. And she thought about Papa and tears sprang from her eyes and suddenly fell weary, as if she had been clinging to a rope but didn't have the strength to hold on longer. She sobbed with her eyes closed and imagined she was falling and the wind whooshing past her and nothing but darkness below. Anza, could I fall all the way back to Mexico if I never open my eyes again? And she felt Miguel's hand on her arm and opened her eyes. Anza, everything will work out, he said. Esperanza backed away from him and shook her head. How do you know these things, Miguel? Do you have some prophecy that I don't? And prophecy is kind of like where some, people say they could see in the future. She's like, can you see the future? Can you see something that I don't see? I have lost everything, every single thing, and all the things I'm meant to be. See these perfect rows, Miguel? They're like what my life would have been. These rows know where they're going straight ahead. Now my life is like a zigzag in the blanket on Mama's bed. I need to get Abuelita here, but I cannot send her my pitiful savings for fear my uncles will find out and keep her there forever. I pay Mama's medical bills, but next month there'll be more. I can't stand your blind hope. I don't want to hear your optimism about the land of possibility where I have no proof. As bad as things are, we have to keep trying, but it does not look good. Look at yourself. Are you standing on the other side of the river? No, you are still a peasant. With eyes as hard as green plums, Miguel stared at her and his face contoured into a disgusted grimace. Ooh, that means he is very upset with her. And you still think you're a queen. And so he said something pretty hateful, right? It does not mean nice. So this is all about the river, the big metaphor, and what that means, right? So here's the first question. What does Esperanza and Miguel's fight about on pages 222, or I'm sorry, from 220 through 224? So hopefully you wrote something down in your journals, and we'll answer it together here. So this is kind of what I wrote, and it's okay if yours is different, but hopefully you had the gist of it or the idea of it, okay? They are arguing about Miguel deciding to do dishes when the Okie showed up to take over the mechanic's work. Esperanza is really upset about how they're being treated, but is taking it out on Miguel. She even calls him a peasant, and that's not a nice word. That means she's trying to say that he's this poor guy, you know, like he was in Mexico, like saying he's a helper, right? She tells him, speak up for yourself and your talents, okay? Then, what does Miguel mean when he said he was a second-class citizen in Mexico? And that was on page 222. We read it together, and hopefully you wrote something down. So I wrote, Miguel is referring to the fact that she thought he wasn't good enough for her. Remember? She says, I'm on one side of the river and you're on the other side. And that he was just a servant and they stood on opposite sides of the river, the metaphor of their lives, right? Meaning that I'm on one side and you're on the other. And then, that one went backwards. Why did Miguel call Esperanza a queen? And you can find these on pages 222 and 18 in the beginning. He called her his queen. Miguel has always called her his queen, right? Ever since she referred to him as a peasant in Mexico. At first, she did it as an insult because he was hurt she did not think him good enough, right? Then it became more of a joke. And in this chapter, he was hurt again. She hurt his feelings, right? She called him a peasant. So he meant it as an insult. When he called her that, he was not being nice about that, right? Okay. So, and we know about that. So now we're going to move on to the huge big metaphor, the blanket, right? They've referred to the blanket a couple of times. So go ahead and pause and write these questions down and go ahead and go back to 224 and reread it, or we can reread it together, however you want to do it. So the first question you write down is on page 224. What did Esperanza try to explain to Miguel about her life? And then at the top of page 222, what might the word prophecy mean? And how might you figure this out? And so I kind of given you a little heads up of what it means. And hopefully you remember what it talked about. And so let's read page 224. Let me move myself. Wonderful. Do you have some prophecy that I do not? I have lost everything, every single thing, and all the things that meant to be. See these perfect rows, Miguel? They're like what my life would have been. These rows know where they're going, straight ahead. Now my life is like a zigzag in the blanket on Mama's bed. I need to get Abuelita here, but I cannot even send her pitiful savings for fear my uncles will find out and keep her there. I pay Mama's medical bills, but next month there'll be more. I can't stand your blind hope. I don't want to hear your optimism about the land of possibility when I see no proof. As bad as things are, we have to keep trying, but it does no good. Look at it yourself. Are you standing on the other side of the river? No, you are still a peasant. With eyes as hard as green plums, Miguel stared at her and face controlled and disgust grimace, and you'll still think you're a queen. Okay, so this is the blanket, the metaphor blanket. So the first question was on page 224, which we just read. What does Esperanza try to explain to Miguel about her life? So she's just feeling like her life's in shambles. So again, it's okay if you wrote something different. This is kind of what I wrote. And see how I put quotations marks around that question and stuff. So I'm definitely quoting from the book. So Esperanza says, comma, at quotation marks, see these perfect rows, what my life would have been. Now my life is like a zigzag in the blanket of mama's bed, quotation marks. And she means that she cannot predict what is going to happen anymore, and it's all messed up in her life, like a zigzag. It's going all over the place, up and down. It's just a mess, and that's how she feels in this chapter, and that's why she uses the blanket. So at the top of page 224, what might the word prophecy mean, and how might you figure this out? Now, I kind of told you about it, but this is what I wrote. Esperanza is referring to the fact that Miguel told her everything was going to be all right. She wanted to know if he was able to predict the future, right? So somebody that could see the future. And she was like, I don't see your plan. So he obviously has something in mind, planned, something that he's going toward, for something to be optimistic about. And she's just like, I don't see it, buddy. So now we're going to talk about the next big metaphor, and it's the heartbeat. So on page 2, okay, this is where you get your notebook out, write these questions down, and you can label it the heartbeat. So the first question, and you can pause your screen, is on page 248. Where do Esperanza and Miguel go? And then the next question is, what happens while they are there? And why is this important? What message might the author be trying to give readers? So let's go ahead and read page 248. Kind of stretched it out, looks kind of funny, but you can follow along. They followed the dirt road that headed east and parked when they could go no further. In the gray light, they could see a small footpath to a plateau. When they got to the top, Esperanza looked out over the valley. The cool, almost morning air filled her senses. Below, she could see the white roofs of the cabins in straight rows, and the field beginning to take form. And over the eastern mountains, a hopeful brightening. She bent over and touched the grass. It was cool but dry. She lay down on her stomach and patted the ground next to her. Miguel, do you know if you lie on the ground and stay very still, you can feel the earth's heart beating? He looked at her skeptically. She patted the ground again, then lay down as she was facing her. Will this happen soon, Esperanza? Aguante tantino y la fruta queda en tu mano. Wait a little while and the fruit will fall into your hand. He smiled and nodded, and they were still. Okay, boys and girls, the first question was on page 248, and it's about the heartbeat, right? Where do Esperanza and Miguel go? So they went where they could see the valley and to be alone at the top of the hills, right? And then the next question about the heartbeat was, what happens while they're there, and why is this important? What message might the author be trying to give the readers? Now, if you remember at the beginning of the book, she talked about that with her father, and now she's here with Miguel, and they're all alone, and she brings this up. What might this mean? So they lay down on the ground and listen to the earth. They hear the heartbeat, and she sees another vision. This time it's a positive one. Remember in the beginning where she lay down and she's like, I don't hear it anymore. But now she does. So this is a positive one, and you can see the change in Esperanza. And the author is trying to get the readers to understand that things are getting better, and Esperanza now has hope. And so that is so, so, so important. And that is a huge metaphor, and then I'm hoping that you guys understand that. Wow, you guys are doing great. This is awesome. So now we're going to talk about the rose as the big metaphor. Why do Papa's roses matter so much to Esperanza? And you saw why it did in the beginning, but this one is on page 225. So pause your screen and go ahead and write that question down. Let's read 225. Reading fingers ready. The next morning, Miguel was gone. He had told his father he was going to Northern California to look for work on the railroad. Hortensia was confused and worried that he would leave so suddenly, but Alfonso reassured her. He is determined, and he is 17 now. He can take care of himself. Esperanza was too ashamed to tell anyone what was said in the vineyard, and she secretly knew Miguel's leaving was her fault. When she saw Hortensia's anxiety, Esperanza felt the heavy responsibility for her safety. So remember, they were fighting. She went to Papa's roses, and when she saw the first bloom, her heart ached because she wished she could run and tell Miguel. Please, Our Lady, she prayed, don't let anything happen to him, or I will not be able to forgive myself for the things I said. Now, this is the wonderful thing where he brought Papa's roses with the little mother of, so she's saying Our Lady, which is the Lady Guadalupe. And she's just saying, please, please forgive me. And Esperanza keeps her mind off of Miguel by working hard and concentrating on Isabel. When Esperanza saw a lug of early peaches come in, and then it goes on to the rest of the story. So the big metaphor of the rose. Why do Papa's roses matter so much to Esperanza? And as we just read, this is what I wrote. So to Esperanza, the roses are a memory of her Papa, right? And all the good things she remembers about with her life with her dad. When she sees them blooming, she wants to tell Miguel because she realizes that he would have understand, that he knows where she's coming from. And that's why he saved them. And that's why him and his dad replanted them, because he knew how important they were, right? But he had already left. But as you can find out the rest of the story and how that goes. So now we're going to move on to the other big metaphor in the story was the grapes and the harvest. So at the bottom page, go ahead and pause your screen and write these questions down. At the bottom of page 246 through page 247, the author describes the grapes. What are the grapes a metaphor for, and how do you know? And then the next question is, what did Papa mean when he told Esperanza, wait a little while and the fruit will fall into your hands, right? And you can see this on page 2 and page 223. So let's read the first two for the first question, and then we'll read the next two for the next one, right? Okay, I'll put this right here. So let's start right here. It was all very exciting, and Miguel didn't leave her side once during the entire trip. He brought her all the way here. Add one stitch. He said that Ramona and Esperanza needed her. He was right, said Mama, but her eyes teary again, grateful looking at Miguel. Mountains and valleys, so many of them, thought Esperanza. When a strand of her hair fell into her lap, she picked it up and wove it in the blanket, so that all the happiness and emotion she felt at this moment would go on forever. When Esperanza told Abuelita their story, what all had happened to them, she didn't measure time by usual seasons. Instead, she told it as a field worker, as spans of fruit and vegetables, and by needed to be done by the land. They had arrived in the valley at the end of the grapes, and Thompson's seedless, let me move myself, red malgus and the blue-black redburs. Mama breathed in the dust at the end of the grapes, and that's when she got sick. Then it all been time to prune the grapes and get ready for the potatoes. Working potatoes was the heart of the winter and the cold that dampened the bones. And during potato eyes, Mama had gone to the hospital. There had been no months with names, only the time of trying kings amidst the ghosts of grapes and gray days that never warmed. But afterward came the anticipation of spring and valley pregnant with needs, graceful as asparagus, ripening vineyards and groaning trees. Then early peaches called crickets in the field started their nightly symphonies. And Mama came home. Abuelita arrived during plums, and now the grapes were delivered another harvest, and Esperanza was turning another year. A few days before her birthday, Esperanza begged Miguel to drive her to the foothills before sunrise. There was something she wanted to do, and she woke up in the dark and tiptoed in the cabin. So that's for the first question. And then we're going to revisit these 2 pages for question number 2. Maybe I must be determined than others to succeed, but I know what it means. Aguante tentino while la fruta carne en tu mano. The word stopped her as if someone had slapped her in the face. That was Papa's words, right? Wait a little while and the fruit will fall into your hand. But she was tired of waiting. She was tired of Mama being sick and Abuelita being far away and Papa being dead. As she thought about Papa, tears sprang from her eyes and suddenly felt weary as if she had been clinging to a rope, but didn't have the strength to hold on any longer. She sobbed with her eyes closed and imagined she was falling, with the wind whooshing past her and nothing but darkness below. Anda, could I fall all the way back to Mexico if I never opened my eyes again? She felt Miguel's hand on her arm and opened her eyes, and Anza, everything will work out, he said. Esperanza backed away from him and shook her head. How do you know these things, Miguel? So on page 2, we're reminded of when she lays in the grass with her dad, right? Papa lay down on his stomach and looked up at her, patting the ground next to him. Esperanza smoothed her dress and knelt down. Then, like a caterpillar, she slowly inched flat next to him, and their eyes faced, looking at each other. The warm pressed on the Esperanza's cheek, and the warm earth on the other, she giggled. Shh, he said. You can only feel the earth's heartbeat when you're still and quiet, right? She swallowed her laughter and after a moment said, I can't hear it, Papa, or Papi. Aguanta tantino y la fruta carne en tu mano, he said. Wait a little while and the fruit will fall into your hands. You must be patient, Esperanza. She waited and laid still and watching Papa's eyes, and then she felt it. Softly at first, a gentle thumping, then stronger, a resounding thud, thud, thud against her body. She could hear it too, the beating rushing her ears. Shoop, 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 shoop. So the first questions, we can find those at the bottom page of 246 through 247. The author describes the grapes. What are the grapes a metaphor for, and how do we know? So you might have wrote something different, but this is what I wrote. So the grapes are a metaphor about the life repeats itself. Mama had gotten sick at the end of the grape harvest the year before. Mother, remember, she breathed in the dust, and now they were back again. To Esperanza, it meant that they could start the year over, this time with hope. The grapes were delivering another harvest, and Esperanza was turning in another year older, right? Okay. And then the other ones we found where we're talking about their dad saying, we got to be patient. What did Papa mean when he told her, wait a little while and the fruit will fall into your hands? And we read those two passages on page 2 and page 223. So Papa meant that she had to be patient and let things take their time, right? Like when fruit is ripe, it will fall off of trees or vines, right? When it's ready. It tells you when it's ready. So be patient. Those were our big metaphors in the thing, and hopefully you're starting to understand these and starting to pick these out. So as we said in our last video, is your guys' homework was to write a 2-voice poem with somebody. So today we're going to finalize and perform it. So you're going to finalize it and then read it out loud with somebody. And so to help you out, so this is your final draft. So a final draft is error-free. It has good punctuation, creative, and then you have to revise it, reread it, however you need to do it. So take the time and pause and make sure to rewrite it error-free and work with your partner if you need to, or however you did it, if you wrote it by yourself. And for fun, Mrs. Wilson wrote one because we talked about NEMO and some of our things when we're having fun. So I wrote one about NEMO and MARLIN. And so I'm going to have my husband come and read this with me, and then pause your screen and just write yours and revise it and read it out loud to your family or to wherever you're at, however you need to. So let me go get my husband. All right, everyone, this is my husband, Terry. He's going to help me read this poem. So I'm going to be Nemo and he's going to be Marlin, okay? So my name is Nemo.
My name is Marlin.
We live in a Great Barrier Reef. I got captured by a boatman.
I chase after Nemo.
We both go on an adventure. My dad saves me.
And I save my son.
We both make it home safe. Well done. Good job, Terry. Thank you for helping me. I appreciate my husband helping me. And as we were doing that, if I would have went back and revised this, I would have seen that this needed a period, right? And I would have seen that this needed a period to make complete sentences. So it happens to everybody. So go ahead and pause, perform this for your family, revise it, re-edit it, however you need to do it. Wonderful. So your exit ticket for today is if you have to finish the two-voice poem and the novel, you have no homework, right? But if you need to, finish your poem or the novel. So that's really it, boys and girls. All these are done. Make sure your poems are done. And then tomorrow we're going to be working on some paragraphs and stuff. I had let you guys know yesterday what we'll be doing. So I'm just so happy that you guys joined me today and have a great day.